Howdy everybody. Cool, so I thought I'd say a big thanks to Resultex for putting on this event. I think it's super timely. 2015 is a very exciting year for I guess us in the industry where cloud is sort of coming of age. Cool, so essentially Russell and I are going to really look to provide a bit of encouragement, a bit of advice and also some reassurance about moving to the cloud. So there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about. We have an amazingly broad range of cloud services with Office 365, Azure, etc. But really, we've got 20 minutes, which is not a lot of time. So there's a few key takeaways that we'd like you to really go away with. The first thing is what we're seeing is organisations need to take a strategic approach to looking at this. I think that the key point raised earlier by Andrew around emotional buy-in is super important. We're seeing a lot of stuff sort of bang up and sort of die at the acceptance level. Next thing is looking at plumbing. Most of our conversations at this stage are around looking at cloud foundations. And if you don't get this foundational stuff done, whether it's identity, networking, and connectivity, your cloud journey is going to take a long time and not go very fast. Additionally, Microsoft as a company, our DNA really has changed. We've been known in the past as the Windows and Office company, and we still are the Windows and Office company. But there's a lot more stuff that we do, and we're very much a cross-platform company today. Next thing is probably a little bit contentious, but Australia is awesome. We're very excited about having Australia on board with some data centres.
I can't play cricket.
But hopefully they can run data centres.
It's just the Australians.
And don't forget now across the boundary at customs we want in your passwords.
That's right, I just heard about that this morning. Good on customs.
Well, anywhere in the cloud across the boundary.
Indeed. And the last thing is, when you're actually looking at your cloud partnerships, there's obviously, maybe 10,000 or more cloud service providers, as has just been pointed out, and there's cloud service providers and cloud service providers. So, depending on what you're going to put up, and your level of acceptance and sanction or otherwise, you have a look at the qualifications and make sure you're betting on some good partners. So what am I seeing in Wellington? Most of my job involves working with 18 large government agencies. So what am I seeing here? First thing off is 80% of my conversations are now about cloud, and 80% of the conversations about cloud are about planning. So there's a little bit of doing going on, which is cool, and people are testing the waters, but most of it's about planning. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It does mean that everyone in agencies and in terms of service providers who are also catching up with this, it gives them an opportunity to actually think about how do we approach this strategically and get our ducks in a row. Also, what we're seeing is some particular workloads being picked off as things which look like sensible early targets, like managing identity and existing SaaS services and DLP around that. Now that's where you can actually use cloud to address cloud risk. Next off, we have test and dev, which is typically an area where there's lots of money chewed up in it. It's super complex. And to me, this is a little bit where sort of cloud's a bit like virtualization 2.0. And people weren't sure about virtualization, right? We put your crown jewels onto that software on the hardware or not. So people thought, where have I got just money burning away? Where have I got some pain points? And maybe I'll try those things for starters. That's very much where test dev sits today, as well as being tied in with the whole DevOps movement too. Next side of things is DR and business continuity, another area that ties up a lot of money, and does your DR or BCP plan actually work? Right, so this is another area where there's some quite innovative capabilities with cloud, even between existing on-premises data centres who are up into the cloud or back from the cloud. There's some pretty cool ideas. And lastly, this is probably the most interesting area, this is one of the transformative areas, is how can you actually create hybrid applications where maybe you've got some nice bits of cloud being used to do sort of web scale for mobile or web, but you can actually keep your crown jewels down here. I'm not seeing anyone really do that quite yet so much, but I think it's a good idea. So I was quite pleased yesterday. I ran into someone who actually started talking about cloud operating model before me. So what really is it about? So the first thing is, why would you do cloud? Cloud's a super hot buzzword. We've had unified and stuff before. We've unified everything, unified comms, unified compute. Cloud's a little bit like that. You can smear it across everything. But I think it's about being really clear through your technical decision makers, your business decision makers, etc., the security guys, why you want to do this. Next thing is, how do I approach this? Has anyone got a cool framework on a plate that they can offer up? I think this is a fantastic consulting opportunity area, is how do you actually help organisations figure this out and what do they do when? It's an area that we need to provide some more guidance on as well as an important thing. Also, once you've made the decision to send stuff up, which things do you start with? Which things are just going to be too hard? Which things are you going to go, right, we can do that, we can transform that, or biff it up as it is and save some money. So having a really nice framework for making decisions around what, when, and how. Also, the next thing is around who do I need? Cloud, and I've been telling customers that, and partners as well, that probably in the last 18 months, the number of things that we as Microsoft have that we can talk about with you has almost doubled, which makes it damn difficult for me, damn difficult for you, and damn difficult for our partners. There's just so many different ways that you can do things. Also, there's a lot of abstraction going on. I don't think being a server jockey is going to be a great place to be in the next couple of years. You can still get away with it today. But skill sets need to change, and people need to look at what's the logical career path, considering what I know today, how am I going to shape my career. It's also a case for agencies and organisations to look at who do I need from a talent pool perspective, from a partner perspective, who can actually help me with this. And of course, figuring all that out and staying off the front page of the newspaper, which is priority number one, arguably in government. So, I suppose when you're looking at the why side of things, this is something I love about Microsoft, is we do this dog fooding thing, right? So we do talk about rebranding that as cat food or champagne or something, but I like dog food personally. There's the fact that we try and not be hypocritical about this, right? So if we're going to recommend that you do something, if you're going to go to the cloud, do stuff, then we're going to do it first. And our own internal IT shop, Microsoft IT, aims to be our first and best customer. So we are moving to the cloud. We have moved to the cloud. I think we're going to have nearly 93% of our own services and applications in the cloud very, very soon. And we're doing it for the same reasons that you guys would do it. It's the agility, it's the economics, and the ability to innovate fast. So when I think about the key reasons to actually adopt the cloud, and I actually ran a session around using risk analysis recently to actually get up to the cloud rather than what getting to the cloud. And I asked a number of people, so do you think your executives can see the benefits at your senior leadership team level? And the answer was no, which was a bit of a worry, but means we've got a bit of work to do collectively, I think. But those benefits of why it actually shifted to the cloud in a meaningful way just aren't clear enough. So obviously the first thing is, it's straight out utility. If you want cheap IaaS, that's in the cloud. It's hyperscale. Next thing, if you want to basically simplify your operation, get away from that traditional 80% run, 20% change, and if you can actually abstract things, consume services, especially around SaaS, great way to do it. Evolve. I think this is actually probably the least talked about area of benefit with cloud. And people are actually comparing stepping up to the next version of Exchange compared to stepping to Exchange and Cloud and saying, well, they cost kind of about the same, so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah, you could. But if you think about when you're stepping into the cloud, and depending on the type of cloud service it is, that's a year in the life of Office 365. Once you're in the cloud, that changes every month. New services come on stream. We keep on enhancing this. And your next level of effort to actually deliver this to your business is around understanding what it is and helping them make use of it. You don't have to build, you don't have to business case, you don't have to buy, you don't have lifecycle management around this to the same degree. So you get under this conveyor belt of goodness when you actually step onto a cloud service, which on an on-premise fashion, you just step, wait 3 to 5 years after your business case has been biffed back twice, and then go up to the next level, and then sell that for the next 3 to 5 years. Fundamentally different model. Number one challenge for CIOs is actually delivering goodness to the business quickly. Right, so if you've got this abstraction, services on tap, this is going to let you do this to a greater degree. The last thing is innovation. This is where you've got supercomputing as a commodity. This is where you can see that in 365 we sort of weave in machine learning into all of our services when it makes sense, just because we can, because we've got a supercomputer over the back fence. Looking at getting to cloud, and this is obviously a bit of a simplification here, but I can't emphasise enough, before you start populating services and consuming services any more than you already have, whether it's 30 or 100, it's actually make sure you have the plumbing sorted out, the connectivity, the identity, that side of things first. If you don't do this, you're either going to be doing it in a damn messy way, or it's just going to take a long time. So things can easily die in the security policy conversation. So just hammer that stuff out for starters. The next thing is, you really understand your application and service portfolio. We've actually been through this ourselves at Microsoft with the IT group. Over 5 years, so it takes a while to do this, we aggressively reduced it down from 2,500 to 1,100 services. So that's just a lot less stuff to move. Then actually understand what sort of categories do those applications or services fit in. Then running email, it's not really a strategic value-add activity. So you'd say that's a commodity service, throw that one over the fence. But actually categorise your applications and services, understand what the right types of cloud targets are, and there's always multiple options, but actually map this out. Then looking at skills and your talent pool. So the slightly hard to read diagram I've got down the bottom is the Microsoft IT view of, we have these types of people doing these types of jobs at the top. And then when we think about what we actually need to have in a cloud world, it's a different set of jobs. Then how do we actually look at our people, our talent, and help them shape some great careers so that A, they can keep their jobs and learn a bunch of new stuff, and we've got the skills and talent that we need. So don't underestimate that, but also balancing that up with the fact this is a hybrid world, and so you need existing types of skills balanced up with the new skills, but the balance is going to change over time. The other thing as well is that you can have some fundamental changes in the nature of service provider relationships or partner relationships. Now, Microsoft, typically, we sell you some licenses. You might get a box, or you might download the software, and you have to move on your merry way. It could be, in 3 months, 40% of your core enterprise productivity services run in our data centres, and you probably don't want to be relying upon calling 0800 Microsoft after the guys wanting a fix for their Xbox controller, or calling your account manager. So you need to look at the nature of your support relationships with providers who are now operating in different ways. The other thing is around, I suppose, cross-platform side of things. I love this quote from Satya. There's no holding back anything. It's about being able to excel everywhere our customers are. This is a fundamental change. It is a DNA change. Saying, look, there's certain areas where we've perhaps dominated in the past. Markets have moved, markets have changed. And even the points of monetisation for things are different now. Things like our Azure cloud. We want that to be the best possible place for you to run anything, whatever that is. And we have dedicated teams working on Linux, working on FreeBSD. We've been the largest contributor to the Linux kernel. So things are very, very different. You can sit on a Mac, doing Linux development, creating Android apps, and do it all, and orchestrate it all through our cloud services. Now, it used to be called Windows Azure, so we chopped that a little while ago for obvious reasons. Then who would have thought, a couple of 3 years ago, there'd be a stunning version of Microsoft Office on an Android, or the level of effort we've gone into to make OneNote a truly fantastic experience on iOS. A very different company today. At that point, I'm going to hand over to Russell to talk about trustworthy cloud.
Perhaps as we hand over, are there any questions for Pete? So to follow on, I guess, as Pete said, one of the things that cloud service providers need to do is provide their customers, I think, increasingly with reassurance about the decision that they've either taken or they're looking to take about moving to the cloud. And central to all of that is the ability to build trust with their customers. And I suppose for software and hardware vendors, for IT service providers, the need for trust has always been there. But I think, and we are seeing that as we increasingly have customers looking at cloud services, the nature of the trust relationship is changing somewhat. Looking at this picture, I was just thinking actually, if you watched the news this morning and saw the latest sort of revelations in the media about New Zealand's activities in regard to surveillance of some of our sort of foreign neighbours, it's interesting that we have the beehive here sitting as the backdrop to the question of trust. Trust is hard to achieve, difficult to sustain, and very easy to see eroded through your actions, as the government constantly knows, this government and every government. But at any rate, I think one of the things that we talk to our customers about in terms of can you trust us is this sheer scale and depth and breadth of our cloud operation. So this slide is kind of, there's some bragging rights here. It's nice to be able to brag. This is a little bit about the scale of our cloud services. We have 200 or so cloud services. We've effectively been in the cloud services business for almost 20 years before we were talking about cloud either internally or in the marketplace. But I find these statistics, and they're certainly out of date. Some of them are 3 months old, so they're definitely out of date. We have 57% of the Fortune 500 using Microsoft Azure. There's 300,000 active websites sitting in there. There's more than 1 million SQL databases in Azure. This blows my mind. We've got 30 trillion objects sitting in Azure storage. We're handling 3 million requests per second. We have 300 million users of Azure Active Directory. We're doing 13 billion authentications per week. We've got 1.65 million developers using Visual Studio Online, and as I say, that's all out of date, but that's in reference to a cloud that's now something like 12 million servers. And if it's not the largest cloud on the planet today, it probably soon will be. Both in terms of geographical scope and number of data centres and the sheer number of servers that we have. So here last year we had 16 so-called Azure regions worldwide. Altogether I think we have something like 100 data centres in Microsoft, but not all of them we would call part of our Azure cloud. And of course we have our Australian data centres which go live, or have gone live, and I think we've publicly announced the go live date and general availability for Office 365, which is later in March. So we're investing constantly in building out our cloud data centre environment, and there's a trust element to this, because one of the key concerns that many of our customers, not exclusively public sector customers I would add, have is of course data sovereignty. And while we can't build cloud-scale data centres in every country and every market in which we operate to be an Azure data centre, that's a 600,000 server investment per data centre. So that's a significant investment, but we are nonetheless continuing to invest in building out data centres as the demand for cloud services rise, and in certain markets it becomes very clear that to obtain the trust we need, as well as deliver services with some of the performance features that the cloud can deliver, we need to make those investments. One of the key questions that relates to trust and data sovereignty is data location. Customers often ask us, what control do I have over where our data centre resides? And really the purpose of this slide is just to highlight that in Australia, which will be available for Australian, New Zealand and Fijian customers to use. We won't be allowing customers from other parts of the world to place their data there, at least for the foreseeable future. We make a very clear commitment with our customers that their core data remains in Australia. There may well be reasons why we need to move data about their data in the ways that we are looking after it, out to analysts elsewhere to work on the data, but the actual customer data, as we define it in our contracts, stays in Australia. And so, as Pete said, from our perspective, when we think of New Zealand customers, Australia is awesome in terms of the fact that we have made the investment in data centres in both Sydney and Melbourne. And there's really two sides to the big benefits that we're talking to our customers about. Firstly, it's the sovereignty question. For many customers, they derive some comfort and an ability to trust us because their data is residing in a legal jurisdiction that's familiar to them, where we have strong intergovernmental relations, where there's a very similar privacy regime in play, and there's a whole raft of intangibles, including the interpersonal relationships that many of us have with colleagues, friends or family in Australia, and just generally we know a lot about Australia, we feel comfortable about Australia. There's also a big technical performance benefit that we are seeing, and we're measuring this in lots of ways, and that's latency, and that's a question we often get. I think another element in trusting a cloud services, is it reliable and does it perform at the level I need? So we're seeing a latency down to the sort of 30 millisecond level, less in some cases, and we're starting to get some very good feedback, both in case studies and anecdotal feedback from our customers saying we moved our data into Australia, we moved our operations in there, and we're seeing a big increase in performance. So I guess that's all to sort of speaking to some of the big customer concerns that we confront. And as I say, many of them, and fundamental to trust, is the data sovereignty question. And typically around the world, not just in New Zealand, we're seeing these 5 questions or variants of them. Who has access to my data? What are you going to do? Or how are you protecting my data? Where is my data? Can I verify that you're doing what you say you are? And essentially, why should I trust you with the crown jewels of my organisation? So this is part of the response that we have for our customers, and these things are written into our contract, and that's a very important point that I think we stress with a lot of people. And when you're looking at any cloud service provider, it's very important to look at the contract and see what's built in there. We will not, we say, and commit in writing, we will not disclose your customer data to law enforcement unless we are required by law. We will attempt to redirect any law enforcement request to your data directly to you. We'll notify you if we receive a request for your data or a legal demand, unless, again, we are prohibited from doing so. Of course, there's a catch-22 here, and it's to do with national security orders. So if we're subject to a national security order, we can't tell you that we've been subject to a national security order. But a lot of very clever lawyers have found ways to tell you that without telling you that. So we think we can give you a lot of assurance. As I say, we back up these commitments in our contracts, and we also back them up in another way. We will go to court if necessary when governments seek to get customer data that we think is unlawful, and we're currently doing this at the moment. There's a request that's been, where we've been served a warrant by a US law enforcement agency for customer data that we're holding in Ireland. And we've said to the law enforcement agency, no, we don't think that your search warrant has extraterritorial jurisdiction, in the same way that you couldn't get on a plane and fly to Ireland and knock on someone's door and serve them a search warrant. You can't ask us to give over data to which, by the way, in our contracts we say we have no right or claim of ownership. So we're in court at the moment, and we've committed very publicly, particularly through our General Counsel Brad Smith, that we'll take this all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary. We've said to the law enforcement agency and to the US government, you have a legal agreement with Ireland, with the government of Ireland. If you want that data, go through the governmental channel, not through us. So we'll continue to challenge government demands and really push to help shape the law. We're very vocal about that, while at the same time being mindful that we do need to be law-abiding wherever we operate. So stepping back from that, a lot of the discussion certainly that I'm having with customers and with policymakers in New Zealand is around this question of trustworthy cloud and really starting to build a shared understanding of the elements of trust that we think are important for any organisation or any customer to be looking toward any cloud service, and they are cyber security, data privacy, compliance with all the relevant standards that are seen to be important, and then transparency about how data is being looked after, about where data is being handled, about how operations around the cloud service are conducted, and so on and so forth. And I think we've got a very strong story to tell, as Microsoft, in terms of what we bring to the table in each of these areas. Best in class security, very strong focus on privacy by design. I think we lead, we would say unarguably, the industry in terms of standards compliance, and we continue to invest there heavily, and we are very transparent, even to the level of allowing people to actually come and visit our data centres, although I'm told it's very dull. And all you generally see is someone pushing a broom. The purpose of this slide is just to give you some idea of some of the standards that we invest in complying with. So it's quite a laundry list. One of the points to make here is, I guess, each of these costs us millions of dollars each year in terms of investing in the necessary control infrastructures and then maintaining the investment. Not each of them applies to each of our services, which is why in some cases you'll see no's. In other cases we are still working to achieve compliance. But starting from the top, we've got the criminal justice information system compliance requirements in the States, in the US, We are very proud that we're the only cloud service provider that's so far been acknowledged by the European data protection authorities as meeting the EU model clauses for data protection. And so it goes. I think importantly to New Zealand public sector customers, we've been certified for Office 365 Dynamics and Azure compliance with the UK G-Cloud requirements up to the level of official information. Like many of the players in the industry, of course we have ISO 27001 certification and SOC 1 and SOC 2 type audits being done on a regular basis, etc., etc. And I suppose if you're a bit of a cloud standards geek, like I'm becoming, we think this is a very big deal. Again, this is an industry first. We just announced this last week. We're the first cloud service provider to have achieved ISO 27018 certification, which is all about protection of personally identifiable information held in a public cloud. So we've been certified again as meeting that requirement in relation to Azure, Office 365, Dynamics, CRM Online, and Microsoft Intune. And that further strengthens, I guess, the basis that this gives for trust in our cloud services. It should make people more comfortable with the fact that they're in control of their data, that we only do things with it that we're instructed to do. You know what's happening with your data, because we, through the standard, have to be transparent about what we're doing, and in particular about the return of your data, transfer of your data, any deletion of personal information that we store for you in our data centres. The standard requires us to provide very strong security protections. Importantly, we need to make a contractual commitment, which we do, that we will not use your data for advertising purposes, which means we won't mine it to support an advertising business, and that we inform you about government access to your data or government attempts to access your data. There's a lot of other stuff built into the standard, and I see Colin Wallace in the audience. So Colin, I'm sure, would tell you if I was fibbing. What are we doing here in New Zealand? And again, this is a big part of my job at the moment as National Technology Officer. It's all about assurance for me at the moment. So I'm sure many of you are aware of the GCIO's 104 question due diligence framework. We're working through the process of providing responses to that. We've done it for Azure so far. We have Yammer Enterprise, which many customers are wanting to use in New Zealand, in draft, and that's with the GCIO. Office 365 and CRM Online are in progress. They'll be with the GCIO in final versions by, I should say, the end of March, not Feb. And then we're working on some of our other services such as Intune, And that relates to Pete's point about identity being very much of importance to our customers at the moment. We're putting together a lot of resources that are going to help, we hope, our customers understand our cloud and some of these attributes or elements of trust that we think are so important, and we'll be pushing that out and then starting to do workshops and other events with our customers where we can help them understand a lot of this. In the background, we're working to renew New Zealand's membership of something called the Government Security Program. New Zealand's been a member of this since 2003 and therefore has had the right to inspect some of our source code. That program's now been enhanced, and once we conclude a new agreement, certain agencies will have the right to inspect the way that we're operating our cloud services, and we think that's just another element in building trust in a very deep and ongoing way. We're doing a lot of work providing detailed briefings to customers and others around this whole subject of trusted cloud, and generally working with the local regulators, because I guess this is still very much an evolving model of computing. It's an evolving marketplace, and so a lot of work needs to go into build the necessary frameworks so that everyone in the long run can have confidence that they're doing the right things. So there you go. It's a real gallop through some elements, I think, of trust that are important for us to demonstrate to our customers, and ways to think about trust that we want to share with people and build a sort of dialogue amongst everyone. Thanks a lot.